Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday, May 22nd. You're listening to the Mo.news podcast. I'm mo.news.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to.
So, Moshe, what was the big birthday surprise?
So Alex booked a day at a spa in New Jersey, saunas, a massage. It was really great. It was very relaxing.
And you decided to come back and do the podcast? That's
Jill,
devotion.
Listen, there was a moment where I considered like, hey, you want to do this solo? But
I would have been happy to.
Here I am.
It's funny because I was just to kind of rework our schedule today just because you were a little delayed. And my husband's like, why aren't you just doing it by yourself? Give the guy a day off. I said, Michael, I actually think Moshe likes to work. I think he wants to do this. I would be happy to do this by myself.
I'm still working. I'm working on the ability to take breaks from work, Jill. But thank you. Thanks to all of you who sent wonderful warm wishes on Instagram over the last couple of days.
Okay, let's get to some news here. One person was killed and dozens injured after severe turbulence hit a Singapore Airlines flight. We'll tell you what happened. The defense rests its case without Donald Trump taking the witness stand. So what is next in his New York hush money trial? And speaking of the former president, he or somebody from his campaign posts and then takes down a video online with headlines about a unified Reich. In tech news, AI companies make new safety promises at a summit in South Korea. And Scarlett Johansson rebukes OpenAI over a ChatGPT voice that she says is eerily similar to her own. We'll play a clip of what it sounds like, and you could decide if you think that it sounds like her or not.
I'm a bit skeptical, Jill.
Moshe, not sure if our listeners have heard, prices at the grocery store still sky high. Well, now Target is cutting prices on thousands of items like milk, butter, and even pet food. A TV meteorologist in Miami takes an unusual stand and gets a bit political when it comes to climate change and government policy. And could Serena Williams be coming out of retirement? Yes, please. Plus, Moshe is on this day in history.
Jill, a little history today on the first airplane and a couple of iconic series from the 1990s said goodbye.
Okay, let's start with a scary and tragic situation in the skies. One person has died and at least 71 others were injured on board a Singapore Airlines plane when it encountered severe turbulence. The plane plunged 6,000 feet and sent travelers who were not wearing seatbelts or restrained crashing into the overhead bins. The flight was headed from London to Singapore and had to make an emergency landing in Bangkok, Thailand. 211 passengers and 18 crew were on board. The person who was killed was 73-year-old Jeffrey Kitchen. He was a British man with an existing heart condition. It is thought that he may have had a heart attack on the flight. Now, according to flight data, this entire incident took just about 90 seconds, but still had these devastating results. Of the 71 people injured, the hospital where they were being treated says that it includes citizens from Malaysia, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Spain, the US, and Ireland. And the hospital saying that 6 people are severely injured.
Yeah, some of the passengers describing the incident as happening very suddenly. A 28-year-old student on board said that the aircraft started tilting up and then there was shaking. So they began bracing and then very suddenly there was a very dramatic drop. So everyone seated and not wearing a seatbelt was launched immediately into the ceiling. Singapore Airlines said several passengers had broken arms, but the majority of the injuries were cuts and bruises. Now, we should note that turbulence-related incidents are the most common type of accident suffered by aircraft, given how safe flying is. FAA data shows that severe injuries from turbulence are still pretty rare. There's been about 160 cases recorded over the course of the past 15 years or so, and that's as we're talking about hundreds of millions of flights in that time. Sometimes planes can avoid a turbulent area or a storm they know will bring on turbulence, and sometimes it does come on very suddenly. What's happening up there is, your plane is typically going about 500 miles per hour, especially at cruising altitude. And then there's clashing bodies of air moving at wildly different speeds. So they try to navigate around this, but it does happen. We should note Singapore Airlines is often considered one of the safest carriers in the world. This is a reminder, as we always tell you here on the Mo News podcast, that even when the light is not on, to fly with the seatbelt on, because you never know what might happen. Obviously, there was the incident with Alaska Airlines a few months ago with the piece of the plane coming off. And now this turbulence situation. There have been other incidents in recent months as well. Again, a reminder, unless you're going up and back and forth to the bathroom, to be seated with your seatbelt on.
All right, now to New York City and the Donald Trump hush money payment trial. Trump's defense team rested its case Tuesday after calling just 2 witnesses. The big question, would Trump take the stand? The answer, nope. Most legal experts had thought that it would be too risky and just carry too much downside to put the former president on the stand. And yes, the defense has rested, but outside of the court, Trump told reporters, I won't be resting. I don't rest. I'd like to rest sometimes, but I don't get to rest. A reminder, reporters in the courtroom had said Trump did appear to nod off a few times during the trial. And we also know from Trump that it was a very cold courtroom.
Though, Jill, he said he was concentrating on what was being said at the time with his eyes closed, not actually napping during those moments.
Now, the very brief defense case stands in sharp contrast to prosecutors who, for 2 weeks, tried to convince the jury that the former president conspired to cover up a hush money payment to a porn star. Again, the payment itself wasn't a crime. It is the alleged cover-up. Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records to cover up reimbursements that he paid to his former attorney, Michael Cohen. Cohen paid $130,000 to adult film star Stormy Daniels a month before the 2016 presidential election in exchange for her silence about an affair that she had had with the former president.
Yeah, and Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen were both key star witnesses for the prosecution. They were among the 20 witnesses they called over the 2 weeks. They submitted 200 pieces of evidence. And again, as you mentioned, the defense called just 2 witnesses, including attorney Robert Costello. Costello's role was to push back on Michael Cohen to question his credibility, but that sort of backfired yesterday as Costello on the stand ended up butting heads with the judge, who at one point had to clear the courtroom to lecture Costello on the proper conduct of being a witness. Now, you can try to read things into, how long the prosecution spent and how little time the defense spent here. But the role of the defense, a good defense, is really poking holes in the prosecution's case as you're going along, the cross-examination of the various prosecution witnesses. Enough of you have watched Law & Order to understand this. You just need one juror. You need to convince one juror that there just isn't enough there. Even if Trump did it all, it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So the defense is confident that they were able to draw enough questions into the credibility of Cohen and others here and didn't need to put Trump on the stand. And as you mentioned, Jill, the alleged affair, not a crime. The hush money, not a crime. The reimbursement of Cohen, not a crime. It's the covering it up as a legal expense and then doing so to try to change the election results. That's the felony charge, as opposed to, say, Trump doing all of this to try to ensure Melania did not find out about the affair. So that's the challenge here for the prosecution, is they had to lay out the whole case, that the affair happened, that the hush money payment happened, that the reimbursement happened, that Trump knew what he was doing when he was changing the reimbursement, calling it something else. And then on top of that, that he did so not to cover things up for Melania, but to try to change the election results, to keep this from the American public. So the prosecution has to have done all of that for the jury here to find Donald Trump guilty of the felony level charge, because otherwise, without the whole election thing, it's just a misdemeanor with some fines. So what happens now? Well, as we head into Memorial Day weekend, the judge has said, everyone take a break. We'll come back for closing arguments next week. So we'll be looking out for that next week. We'll see how the prosecution and defense try to summarize the case and then give it to the jury. And then it's in their hands. By the way, when we're talking about the jury, they'll be given instructions, and those instructions are another point of contention. And so there's a discussion right now between the attorneys from both sides and the judge as to the specific instructions that will be given to the jury next week when closing arguments are complete.
All right, time for the speed read from the Associated Press. Some news on AI and what companies will be doing to make sure users stay safe. Leading artificial intelligence companies made a new pledge at a mini summit in Seoul, South Korea on Tuesday to develop AI safely, and world leaders agreed to build a network of publicly backed safety institutes to advance research and testing of the technology. Google, Meta, and OpenAI were among the companies that made voluntary safety commitments at the AI Seoul summit. And that includes pulling the plug on their cutting edge systems if they can't rein in the most extreme risks. The British government co-hosted the event and says that leaders from 10 countries and the EU will, quote, forge a common understanding of AI safety and align their work on AI research. This two-day meeting is a follow-up to November's AI Safety Summit in the UK. The UN Secretary General told the opening session that 7 months after that meeting, quote, we are seeing life-changing technological advances and life-threatening new risks, from disinformation to mass surveillance to the prospect of lethal autonomous weapons. He said we cannot sleepwalk into a dystopian future where the power of AI is controlled by a few people, or worse, by algorithms beyond human understanding.
Well, that first part is sort of coming true, Jill. There's a handful of people and companies right now who are building the most powerful AI. Among the companies that participated in this, by the way, Amazon, Microsoft, Samsung, IBM, as well as some other companies from around the world, including China. Right now, when you look at AI development, the most advanced AI is coming out of the US, coming out of China. What are the Europeans doing? Making rules, holding summits, saying, hey, everyone, maybe we should slow down on this. So these are the roles that you see sort of happening when it comes to most technology, and now is happening in the AI space. At this summit, they vowed to ensure that the safety of their most advanced AI models and made promises of accountable governance and public transparency. It's not the first time we've heard this from AI companies. Remember, they came before Congress last year saying, hey, regulate us. In fact, Elon Musk, who's developing his own AI, has told the U.S. government, and he's not alone, you need to create a separate agency, like an FCC, just for AI. Well, the government has not done so yet, but still you have Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft. Among the groups have signed on to voluntary safeguards brokered by the White House to ensure their products are safe before releasing them. At the same time, though, we've told you about some of the inside information we're getting from OpenAI and other places where there is a feeling there are concerns that they are moving faster and sort of, to borrow a phrase from Mark Zuckerberg years ago, moving fast and breaking things when it comes to AI in this race that all these companies are in with one another. It comes, as we learned last week, OpenAI, which many of you might have used or have heard of ChatGPT. That's theirs. They disbanded. OpenAI disbanded their team last week that was dedicated to controlling AI's existential dangers. Last summer, they announced what they called the Super Alignment Team. It said it was dedicating 20% of its computing power just to this team to protect us from the worst parts of AI. Well, according to reports, the team's requests for computing power were repeatedly turned down by OpenAI leadership. The team never got the budget it requested. It never got to the 20% computing power that it wanted. And so it's been disbanded. So as we're seeing these public promises, as we're watching these companies, not all of them are in alignment with some of the things you see them saying publicly.
And staying with the issue of AI, from CNBC, actress Scarlett Johansson said that she was, quote, forced to hire legal counsel to demand the removal of an AI voice for OpenAI's chatbot that sounded too much like her. The actress revealed Monday that she first received an offer from OpenAI CEO Sam Altman in September about voicing an audio feature for the company's new ChatGPT chatbot. Johansson says Altman told her that she could bridge the gap between tech companies and creatives and help consumers feel comfortable with the seismic shift concerning humans and AI. She said she ultimately decided not to participate in the project after much consideration and for personal reasons. And then OpenAI released new audio tools last week and staged demonstrations that included a voice that's called Sky. Johansson says, when I heard the release demo, I was shocked, angered, and in disbelief that Mr. Altman would pursue a voice that sounded so eerily similar to mine.
Yeah, Scarlett Johansson saying she was getting calls from friends saying, is that your voice on the OpenAI new ChatGPT chatbot? This is the competitor that they've released, that OpenAI has released, sort of their version of Siri, a much more upgraded version of Siri. And interestingly, Altman tweeted at the time in response to questions he was getting on Twitter about it, Her. Of course, that's the film from 10 years ago that Scarlett Johansson voiced that effectively was an AI chatbot. Altman has removed the Sky voice. He says they never intended to resemble Scarlett Johansson's voice. He also says that they actually cast the voice actor for the Sky voice, the woman who plays the Sky voice, before even he approached Johansson. He says further that we are sorry to Ms. Johansson that we did not communicate better, he says. All right, with all that background, of course, we're not going to let you go here without listening to the two voices.
Of course
not. So let's play the actual AI voice. This is a conversation from the OpenAI promo last week of one of the men in the promo speaking to the female voice assistant, Sky. Take a listen.
Okay, so take another look.
That makes more sense. There we go. It looks like you're feeling pretty happy and cheerful, with a big smile and maybe even a touch of excitement. Whatever's going on, it seems like you're in a great mood.
All right, now let's play Scarlett Johansson's voice from Her.
When did you give it to yourself?
Well, right when you asked me if I had a name, I thought, yeah, he's right, I do need a name. But I wanted to pick a good one. So I read a book called How to Name Your Baby, and out of 180,000 names, that's the one I like the best.
Jill, your verdict.
I think it's similar. It's not like uncanny or anything. What do you think?
I think one thing that everyone was taken aback by was the fact that the voice now feels so realistic, right? That, we've been so accustomed to the, Google Maps voice and the Waze voice and the Siri voice being so programmed, feeling so non-human. So I think the fact that it was a female voice with a similar pitch that Altman tweeted Her, and
right. Maybe he shouldn't have tweeted that.
Like that reinforced it. And so, but it made Scarlett Johansson feel that she's got to take legal action here. I do feel like they're different enough. But at the same time, I was looking at the comments on our Instagram post, and some people were like, nothing alike. And some people were like, no, totally alike. So, to your ear, it might sound different. Still, though, the order of events, very suspicious, right? He approaches Scarlett Johansson. He happened to already cast a voice actor. He clearly is into the movie Her. I understand why she might be frustrated. And at the same time, it speaks to our last story, which is, a lot of these AI companies are moving very quickly. So, to Altman's point, we didn't communicate clearly. We're sorry to Ms. Johansson that we did not communicate better.
And I mentioned this the last time we talked about it. If you haven't seen Her, it is a cautionary tale. It is not like this is what we want to happen.
Oh my God, this is an awesome future. Like Her, Terminator, all those movies made in the 90s, early 2000s about the future. Now we're looking back at them like, oh my God, we now live in Blade Runner and Terminator and Her. And those movies were like, no, we shouldn't go into that future.
All right, from NPR, Target says it is dropping the prices of 5,000 common items, joining a growing list of stores trying to draw inflation-weary shoppers. Target's list of price cuts includes milk, meat, bread, soda, fresh fruit and vegetables, snacks, yogurt, peanut butter, coffee, diapers, paper towels, pet food, and more.
Jill, I think that's the full order.
Check. The company said it already lowered prices of about 1,500 items and will continue to do so through the summer. For example, in some areas, a 20-ounce pack of Thomas's plain bagels dropping 40 cents to $3.79. The price for a 75 count of Clorox scented wipes, that's going to be reduced by about $1. And then a 1-pound container of butter dropping by about 20 cents. Walmart and Aldi and also the furniture retailer IKEA have also previously said that their prices are going to drop this year as well. McDonald's is putting some new focus on its value menu, including a $5 meal expected this summer.
Yeah, there's a realization here that inflation is having an impact. The companies are seeing it on their bottom lines, if you've seen their recent reporting from the last couple of quarters. So they need to be part of this effort to keep consumers coming to their stores and restaurants. Lower income families especially have pulled back. They're prioritizing necessities. And so the companies here are responding. Target says, we know consumers are feeling pressure to make the most of their budget, and Target is here to help you save more. Grocery prices generally have been fairly steady. They are up 1% over the past year. They actually dropped by 0.2%. Did you feel it, Jill, between March and April? But as we like to note on this podcast, when you look at it on a grander scale over the last 4 years, they're up 25% since the pandemic.
And Moshe, I'm glad you mentioned that because it was not mentioned in the NPR article, which made it sound like nothing to see here. Food prices are actually going down. And I know that we joke on this podcast that I'm obsessed with grocery prices, but I did find that article in terms of how it's trying to contextualize food prices kind of infuriating. And it made me wonder whether some mainstream media outlets are totally out of touch, as the criticism is, with regular Americans. We keep hearing from analysts, especially when talking about the economy and politics, the economy is great. What don't Americans get? And this is why. It's because it costs an entire paycheck to go food shopping for a family. And I know I talk about it all the time, but every time I do, I get tons of messages from people and they'll send me memes or jokes about it, which means I'm not the only one who feels it.
No, certainly people are feeling it, and you're seeing it play out in our politics as well.
From Axios, amid a record-breaking heat wave, a Miami TV weathercaster had an urgent message for his viewers. Go vote if you want to fight climate change. NBC6 meteorologist Steve McLaughlin challenged Florida's climate policies and warned viewers about politicians who don't believe in climate change. He criticized Governor Ron DeSantis for signing legislation last week that removes references to climate change from state law as Floridians face sea level rise, coral bleaching, and heat waves. So take a listen to some of his report.
On Thursday, we reported on NBC6 News that the government of Florida was beginning to roll back really important climate change legislation and really important climate change language, in spite of the fact that the state of Florida over the last couple of years has seen record heat, record flooding, record rain, record insurance rates, and the corals are dying all around the state.
He then said, please keep in mind the most powerful climate change solution is the one that you already have in the palm of your hands, the right to vote.
So the clip has been seen hundreds of thousands of times on social media. That day, actually, Miami's heat index, the feels like temperature, set a May record of 112 degrees. It comes as there's this huge heat dome right now over Central America that is popping up over Florida. Sometimes in Central America and Mexico right now, Jill, in the 120s. So be on the lookout if you're headed down to the Yucatan Peninsula or anywhere in Central America in the next couple of weeks. As far as this video from the meteorologist, he said, the entire world is looking to Florida to lead in climate change, and our government is saying that climate change is no longer the priority it once was. As you mentioned, DeSantis actually striking references to climate change. And so the meteorologist here, McLaughlin, tried to, weave himself by not being too overt, but it was very clear what his message was. He says, I'll never tell you who to vote for, but we will tell you this. Do your research and know that there are candidates that believe in climate change and that there are solutions. It's interesting here, Jill, because these meteorologists are tracking, these various patterns and are, telling us on a daily basis about these records being broken, how out of the ordinary they are. At the same time, they're also told by their bosses to, stick to the script, stick to the, giving folks the weather. But I do know a number of meteorologists who also have climate degrees and feel it's important to share larger context about what's happening, as opposed to just there's a record flood, there's record heat, there's record cold, there's a record blizzard, etc. Now, obviously, there have always been blizzards, cold patterns, hot heat patterns, etc. But we are seeing more and more of it. As someone mentioned to me, and I think we've mentioned a few times on the pod, climate change is more about not just about heat, but about how weird things are getting, that you're seeing a lot of abnormal things, and you're seeing them more often. At the same time, though, how much can Florida itself do specifically? is a question here because there are states that are obviously taking it much more seriously. Still, we thought this was a pretty interesting moment by this meteorologist and thought you should know about it.
And finally, from Newsweek, tennis legend Serena Williams has teased a possible return to professional play. Tennis legend Serena Williams has teased a possible return to professional play following her retirement from the sport in September of 2022. The 23-time Grand Slam winner said that she was, quote, ready to hit some balls again. In a cryptic post on X or Twitter, Williams announced that she was hanging up her racket after being eliminated in the round of 32 at the U.S. Open in 2022. The star revealed at the time that she would be evolving away from tennis after winning 73 singles titles and amassing more than $94 million in career prize money. Since her retirement, she's been keeping very busy. She welcomed her second daughter with husband and Reddit founder Alexis Ohanian.
Jill, some of the reactions from the tennis channel, from the World Tour, the news we needed today. This had us feeling with emojis. Clearly, a lot of people feeling the same way you do, which is like, we wish Serena would come back. Again, it's very cryptic here. A lot of retired players do play in like charity games, etc. So is she referencing that as opposed to getting back on the professional circuit? Unclear here.
I just saw Serena trending on Twitter, and I'm like, please let it be good news.
This. Good news. Though we should note, she also opened up her own investment company, Serena Ventures, and so she's been involved in the business of the sport as well. But yes, the post has sent some tennis fans into a frenzy, and we'll see if she has more to share in the coming days. All right, now time for On This Day in History. We begin in the year 337, May 22nd, 337, nearly 2,000 years ago. That was the date the Roman Empire Constantine converted to Christianity. He was the first emperor to adhere to Christianity, converting on his deathbed. He issued an edict protecting Christians around the Roman Empire that came after a couple hundred years, where the Roman Empire was fighting Christianity, fighting all the religions that were not the Roman religion. Constantine was buried, where else? Constantinople, which was its name for a very long time until it becomes Istanbul. And then just a few decades after his death and his conversion, Christianity would become the official religion of Rome. All right, we're going to fast forward a millennia and a half to 1906. The Wright brothers' flying machine was officially patented on this day. The aviation pioneers were credited with having performed the, quote, first sustained and controlled heavier than air powered flight. They had been experimenting with flying machines for a number of years, and they began to test their gliders. But not surprising, probably to many of you, other folks were also trying to patent their planes at the time. The Wright brothers' patent for flying actually led to a lot of litigation. It actually delayed development for more than a decade before the U.S. government had to open things up, because effectively the courts froze development as they were figuring out who is actually the inventor. But the Wright brothers had a pretty good PR machine in addition to their flying machine behind them, and we give them credit to this day. All right, a little political news here. On this day in 1964, President Lyndon Johnson laid out his Great Society agenda, which included major social reforms for education and poverty. Jill, I caught a recent clip that the Nixon Library put out, where Richard Nixon, Republican, was talking at the time in the 70s about Lyndon Johnson and how incredible a legislator and president he was. So, a time where you could be a Republican, you could praise a Democrat, and vice versa. And I thought that was a pretty remarkable watch. I'll link to it in the show notes. Speaking of Nixon, on this day, he made his own history, the first visit by a U.S. president to the Soviet Union on this day, May 22nd, 1972. We end here with a bit of pop culture. May 22nd, 1980, 44 years ago today, the arcade game Pac-Man was released. And I mentioned some 90s TV shows. 31 years ago today, Jill, you know that theme song, the series finale of Saved by the Bell aired on NBC.
When I wake up in the morning. I've got Zach Morris with that monster cell phone in the halls of Bayside High in my head.
And if you age ourselves, I think the characters from Saved by the Bell, their kids would be in college at this point.
Oh, good. Thank you for that.
No problem. I'm here to make you feel young and spry. Also, another 90s show many of us loved. The series finale of Blossom aired 29 years ago tonight.
Whoa.
So brief. But that was
That's
one of the
Joey Lawrence.
That was Joey
right.
Lawrence. Whoa. That was a meme before memes existed.
Whoa. Okay, it deserved another one. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store.
See you guys tomorrow.